Hi everybody, it's Jen, Scrapbena Creations. Thanks for coming back to watch another 10 card video. This time I'm using the Fairy Tales set from Doodlebug. I'm using the 6x6 paper pad and their die cuts package, which they call odds and ends. So for card number 1, I had cut out a piece of the pattern paper using the fancy scalloped rectangle die from Fawn, but I'm actually going to be covering that up with a frame. I used the stitched rectangle dies, 2 of them, to make a frame. I already put the acetate in to save time and put some foam adhesive on that. I'm using the clearly Besotted Sweet Treats stamp set for my sentiment. This stamp set is absolutely adorable. It has a number of critters in it, and they're all kind of stuffed into different pieces, different food items. And so this particular sentiment says happy birthday with a cherry on top, and I'm going to be using cupcake die cuts from the pack. So I thought that was pretty fitting because they both have a cherry on top. So I'm just heat embossing this banner, which I am using from the Blueprints Dienamics set. I used that die set throughout the card video. And I heat embossed with clear embossing powder using VersaFine Black Onyx ink. Now I'm getting ready to fill my shaker card, so I used a bunch of different colored sequins and also these little seed beads and these beads that actually look like little sprinkles. So just kind of going with the whole birthday cupcake sweet treats theme. Now I ended up getting, you'll see here, I got a sequence stuck on the foam adhesive, so I'm just going to use my scissors here to push that back down to make sure that there is no gaps at all for the sequins and beads to fall through. So I got that fixed up. I just needed to trim the card base a little bit. So this is an A2 size card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I'm going to decide here with the banner if I want to use it portrait or landscape, and I decide on landscape. So I'm just going to match up the stitch detailing on the banner die to the stitch detailing on the frame. And for these particular images, I ended up fussy cutting around them. All of the dies cuts come with a white border around them, and for this particular card I didn't want to keep the white border. So I'm just going to put some adhesive on these. I used my ATG gun, and then I'm using some multi-matte medium, and of course too much came out. I just wanted to use the glue for the little pieces where there wasn't any tape adhesive. So I'm just kind of scattering that around so that it will stick nicely to the acetate. So I wanted to make sure the blue cupcake was closest to the frame because the pink one has a little bit of purple and I didn't want it to get lost. So I'm just using the back of my stamp block here to make sure it's well secured onto the acetate piece. And then to finish it off the card, I'm going to use my Spectrum Noir glitter brush marker. This is clear glitter. It's absolutely adorable and just gives a little bit of shine and shimmer to the card. And then I'm going to be using glossy accents for the cherries, and I'm running out of it, so I need to refill my bottle here. You see me struggling with it throughout this card video. And that's card number 1. So for card number 2, I'm using the Fawn Critters Ever After stamp set for the sentiment. I'm using this scalloped edged die from Fawn. That's the fancy scalloped border. And I'm also using the Blueprints Dienamics die set again for this particular card. So I'm just making sure all of those little holes are die cut out nicely, and then I'm just using a piece of cheap craft foam for the back of my card just to make sure that it lays nice and flat on the card base. So I like to use my ATG adhesive for adhering foam to my paper. I just find it has a nice look to it in the end. Sometimes with glue it can warp a little, even even if you don't use a lot. So I do prefer a tape adhesive. So here is the banner cutout from the Blueprints Dienamics die set, and I'm using the sentiment that says, "May all your dreams come true." So again, I'm using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I am going to heat emboss that using clear embossing powder, just to make it pop off the banner a little bit more. I like the glossy finish that heat embossing gives to sentiments. So once I've got this, I'm going to start putting the card together. So I'm using a pre-made card base. I get them from Joann, and I'm going to adhere my card panel on to that card base, and you can see a little bit of white border around the entire card, which I really like. I'm going to kind of place where I want that sentiment to go, and then I'm going to be using this adorable little unicorn for this particular card. I'm going to trim off that banner a little bit, and then I'm going to put the image on the card. So I'm going to use an action wobble here, and this is the mini action wobble, and I really need to watch a video on which way these are actually supposed to be adhered. So I'm not sure which side is supposed to go on the image and which is supposed to go on your card base. They don't leave any instructions. So in the end, I don't end up using this because I put it on and I think it's just too small for this image. You can't really tell in the card video, but it was wonky. So the head was up a lot higher than the legs, and it looked really funny. So I thought maybe I had adhered it wrong. So I gently kind of tried to pull that off, and then I switched it around, but it was still doing. Now you can see the tail and the head are kind of higher. So it didn't look right. So then I decide that I'm going to use some foam adhesive here. Well, some of the craft foam. So I'm going to start kind of putting a bunch of small pieces together, and I cut a bunch of that out because it looks quite funny in the end, using up a whole bunch of little scraps for this, but it doesn't really matter. You can pop it up however you want. And then I decided to use 3 hearts from the die cut pack as well. So I'm going to put the larger and the smaller one there, and then I'm going to put one closer to the sentiment just to kind of break up the hearts, and wanted to use 3 just because 3s, the rule of thirds and things in 3s or odd numbers are definitely more appealing to the eye. So to finish off this card, I'm using my Spectrum Noir glitter brush marker pen again, and then I'm going to use some glossy accents on the little unicorn horn and on the heart on her little bum, and for the colored pieces on her hooves. And that will finish off card number 2. So I'm just going to hold that up there, and I think that turned out really cute. All of these cards are very clean and simple. So moving on to card number 3, I'm using a flowered background. I'm using the Lawn Fawn Life is Good stamp set, and I've shown the dies there that I'm going to be using the Blueprints die again, some stitched rectangle dies. So I've cut down a piece of the pattern paper for a background. I've used this scalloped border. This is from the MFT Blueprints die set. And I've already gone ahead and put my acetate sheet in. This is going to be another shaker card. And I've put my foam adhesive on. I'm using 2 layers of foam adhesive. And then I decided I'm going to be using flower images. And I thought, I should put some grass on the inside. So originally I hadn't thought about doing the grassy border. This is a Lawn Fawn stitched hillside border. So I originally did the frame in green, but I ended up not liking that. I didn't really like it from the beginning, but I thought, oh, I already have it adhered to the acetate, and I've already got the foam adhesive on, so I'm just going to go with it. But I do change it, and I will show you in the end. I come back the next morning, and I'm like, I really don't like this with the two greens, so I do fix it. I end up putting a pink border around that, and I just adhered it with multi-matte medium on top of the green one. So I'm putting in all my shaker element bits. This time I'm using rainbow colors that match the colors in the paper, and it's all sequins this time. So I'm going to adhere the stitched frame, and once I get that into place, it takes a little while to make sure you have it lined up the way you want it to. So here's the little flower images that come in the die cut set. They're adorable. Originally I wanted to tuck the end of the sentiment banner into the border, but I had adhered it so tightly it wouldn't fit. So by putting the new frame border on it in the end, I was able to do that. So I like that much better. So I'm using the sentiment, "You Brighten My Life." I just thought this was kind of a nice sentiment that goes with the flowers and is a good anytime kind of card. So again, heat embossing this. I cut a bunch of this out because once you see me do it once, I'd rather save your time and not have you sit and watch me do all of the heat embossing on camera. So speeding that up quite a bit. And here is where I'm going to adhere the sentiment, and I'm just using my ATG gun here as well. So I'm lining up the stitching, but in the end that isn't going to matter. But I like the way that's placed so that it breaks up all of that green. And then I'm going to try to evenly space out the flowers. So I know I want this one in the center, so I thought, well, let's put this down. I did not push it down all the way so that I was able to still move it until I knew exactly where I wanted them. And I wanted to make sure these two tulips had equal space between them and the border. So that's how I kind of decided where I wanted the images to go. So again, just going to use some Spectrum Noir glitter brush to put some glitter on that. And there's the card complete until the next morning, where I'm just going to show you I ended up putting the pink, and I like that much better. So on to the next card. For this card, I'm using a stitched rectangle border from Lawn Fawn, some stitched circles from Simon Says Stamp, and the stamp set I'm using is Newton's Nook, Newton Loves Cake, and I'm using two sentiments from that. I'm using Did Someone Say Cake and then Happy Birthday. So I've cut some circles out of cardstock, and I'm using this shimmer spray. This is just a packaging box that I use when I want to spray things. So I sprayed those, and I'm going to let them dry while I create the card here. So I'm using this birthday themed pattern paper, and it's really adorable. It has images of cakes and balloons. So I adhere that onto the card base, and then I want to stamp my sentiment on the medium sized circle. So this is the sentiment that says, Did Someone Say Cake? Which is so cute. And so I'm going to heat emboss this as well. Now, I have to say I sort of struggled with this die cut pack. I love the paper, but for me, in terms of card making, I found that the die cuts were very repetitive and didn't really allow for a lot of creativity with the cards. I do like how the cards turned out in the end, but the ideas and these cards were not easy to come by. So I hope you like them. I do have more than half of the die cut pack left, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those, but I just found a lot of them were not conducive to card making. So you might want to think about that if you're considering buying the die cut package. So for this card, I'm using this adorable little image that is a cake on a cake stand. I mean, the images are absolutely adorable. I just wish that they had more sentiments or just different variety of things. So there's a number of cakes, there's a number of cupcakes, there's a number of rainbows, unicorns, and so on, that doesn't allow for much variety. So I'm using the Happy Birthday sentiment. I love the scripty font of this stamp in this set. Just using a little piece of the paper that was left over on the inside. And I'm going to use some glitter just on the top of the cake. And I'm going to use glossy accents on the cherry. And that will finish off this card. For card number 5, I'm using the stamp set by Clearly Besotted called Under the Weather. And I'm using a stitched rectangle die and a stitched circle die to make a peekaboo window, and then another stitched rectangle for the sentiment. So I'm using yellow cardstock, but I wanted to give it a little bit of dimension and added kind of emphasis. So I'm using Squeezed Lemonade Distress ink just to add a little bit of variation in color. So I'm just going to be adhering this to the card base itself. This will be what you see behind the open circle window. So once I get that down, then I can adhere the pattern paper panel onto the card base. And I'm using the pattern paper that has all the little rain clouds on it. So I thought that would be perfect for a kind of feeling better, cheer up sort of card. So I decided to use the yellow, given it's a complementary color to the blue, so I thought it really popped and would allow the cloud die to really stand out. So I originally thought I was going to be using a piece of this purple pattern paper from the paper pad for my sentiment. So I'm going to heat emboss this. I'm using Versamark ink, which is a really sticky ink that holds the embossing powder, and I'm going to be using the Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White embossing powder. This is an excellent white embossing powder if you're looking for a great brand, and the fine detail is really great for sentiments in particular. So I'm going to heat emboss this. And then I'm going to work on putting the card together. So I do like how the white pops up on the purple. I'm going to use some foam adhesive here for the little cloud with the rain, and also for the rectangle that has the stamp sentiment on it. So once I get this foam adhesive on, I'm just going to start adhering the elements to the card. So I just want to make sure that the cloud and the raindrops is centered in the circle. And then I start looking at this and I'm thinking, I really don't like the purple. I think it would be better if it was more cohesive with yellow. So then I decide to try it with the yellow. So I'm just going to cut out a little bit of the cardstock here. And I'm going to use this squeezed lemonade again once I get that die cut. So I have die cut this off screen, and it's got the stitched rectangle detail. This is the Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. And I'm going to heat emboss that. I did that off camera because you've already seen me do the first sentiment that was on purple. The only thing with the yellow that I don't like is it's a little bit harder to read the sentiment, but that's okay. So now I'm going to stamp on the inside of the card, and this is from the same stamp set, the Under the Weather, and it says Sending Hugs, and I use the little umbrella image that comes in the stamp set as well. So then I'm going to use a piece of the pattern paper that I cut off and put that on the inside, and then I noticed that I got a little bit of black ink on the card, so I'm using my Tombow Mono sand eraser. It's great. It just takes off a little layer of the paper, so you can't see the ink anymore. So that cleaned up really well. And then I'm going to use my Spectrum Noir glitter brush marker here again to just add some glitter to the die cut. And then I used 3 stars. These come in the odds and ends die cut pack as well. So I just wanted to bring in a little bit of color, and in the blue background of the pattern paper it actually has little stars, so it matches perfectly and just gives a little something else to the card. So that will be it for card number 5, and then we will be moving on to our next card here. I may go back and redo that sentiment with a different color of embossing powder. But let's move on to card number 6 now. I'm using the MFT Magical Friends stamp set and the Blueprints Dienamics die set again to stamp out my sentiment, which says hope today is all rainbows and unicorns. So just using some yellow cardstock here. So I'm going to stamp everything except for rainbows with my black VersaFine Onyx ink. And I'm going to double stamp that just to make sure it's nice and crisp. And then I'm going to come in and use the Lawn Fawn green ink to stamp the sentiment that says rainbows. Before creating the card, I had stamped the sentiment using a number of colors. So I tried a pink, I tried a purple, and the green showed up the best and was closest to the colors in the paper on the yellow cardstock. So that's how I chose to use the green. And I do stamp this a few times as well, just to make sure the color is the kind of saturation level that I really want it to be so that it stands out on the card. So I have the sentiment complete, and then I'm going to work on the card itself. So this is going to be a landscape card. And again, just cutting the pattern paper using the stitched rectangle die. I often have a hard time cutting the pieces up into small little pieces of paper because I love the paper so much. So if you're kind of wondering, wow, she uses that rectangle die a lot and has the pattern paper as the focus, that's true because I do really love the pattern paper itself and kind of want that to be the star of the show. So I ended up cutting my own clouds out of a cloud die, and then I'm going to use my X-Acto knife just to put some slits in it so the rainbow can actually tuck into that. It looked kind of funny sitting on top of the clouds in front of them. So I want to place the unicorn and the rainbow on this card so that it makes sense with the sentiment. You'll see here that I play around quite a bit with the placement of them. I wasn't quite sure how I wanted them to be placed on the card, and I move it around quite a bit. So I thought I'd keep it in just so that you could see the process, that you kind of may start out with an idea, but sometimes it doesn't compute, or it doesn't turn out the way you had ideally planned it to be. But just making sure that you're working with things when you're creating your cards so that they're pleasing to you. That's all that matters. So I decided to go with the rainbow on the right hand side, and I wanted the unicorn's feet to be on the sentiment banner so that it looked grounded. I didn't want it to look like she was kind of floating in the air. So I'm going to put the rainbow down first. And I'm just going to trim up that little piece that's overhanging. And then I'm going to pop up my unicorn on some foam adhesive again to give it some dimension. But first I wanted to put some glitter onto the rainbow, and I wanted to do that before I put the unicorn down because it was going to be much easier to do so with the image not over top of it. So here again, I'm just playing with the unicorn. Did I want her kind of tilted? Did I want her just straight? And in the end, I decided to put her there. And I think you could for sure add maybe some enamel dots or whatever kind of embellishment you like to use on this as well. I am keeping them for the most part clean and simple. So on to the next card. How about that? So you saw the materials that I'm going to be using, and I'm using a sentiment from, this is an older stamp set from Hero Arts. It's called All Occasion Messages, and the sentiment says, I have you in my heart. So I'm going to be using the heart pattern paper and then some heart die cuts for this particular card. And I think this one is a good kind of thinking about you, everyday kind of you're in my thoughts or I love you sort of card. So I just used it's a lime green cardstock and heat emboss that sentiment. And then I'm going to work on the card here. So I actually cut up this card base. It is smaller than an A2 size card. This is some glitter paper that I'm using. And I have cut that glitter paper using a stitched rectangle die from Fawn. This is a bordered die from the Dienamics blueprint die set. And I am going to be using some pattern paper around for the backing of that, I should say, as well. So because I'm sticking this to the glitter paper, I'm using my Tombow Extreme Adhesive. This will make sure that it does not move once it is secured to that glitter paper. So I absolutely love this rainbow heart pattern paper. It's so adorable. And I'm going to be placing the sentiment into that bottom rectangle. I'm just using some craft foam here again to pop that up because I like the craft foam as it doesn't give as much dimension as the 3M Scotch foam tape. So if you just want something kind of coming off your paper just a little bit, craft foam is great for that, and it's also really inexpensive. So I'm going to be getting the hearts ready now. So I'm just going to be popping them up with foam as well and just using little bits that I want to use up. So I tend to keep all my little scraps of craft foam just so that I don't waste any and I can use it for small images like this. So this card was pretty quick to put together, and I think it's really simple, but it's quite sweet. The pattern paper really kind of stands out, and you really want that to be the star of the show. It's really pretty. So I'm just making sure here to place the hearts. I wanted the purple one to be in the middle so that it didn't compete with the purple glitter paper that's kind of acting as the border. And then I'm just going to use some glitter here just to kind of give the hearts a little bit of something so they're just not as flat. And that's that card complete. So we're going to be moving on to the next card here in just a second, once I show you this one. So for this one, I'm using this sprinkle type paper. I'm using this Peekaboo Square die, window die from MFT. The stamp set that I'm using is the Simon Says Stamp Ice Cream Dream. I've gone ahead and I've cut the paper using a stitched rectangle border from Fawn, and then that Peekaboo window from MFT. And the sentiment is I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. So I have to press really hard on this because I wanted to make sure the image came out perfect the first time I stamped it. So I was really happy with the way that came out. So I'm just going to adhere the pattern paper right to the card base. This card for the most part is very flat, easy to mail, and I think this is actually my favorite card out of all 10. So you can't really see it that well on camera, but the Peekaboo window has some really beautiful stitch detailing, and I just used the back of that pink paper for the sentiment square. I just flipped it right around, and it actually has some sprinkle type detail to it, so it goes perfectly with these little ice cream images that I'm going to be using for this card. These are absolutely adorable. I wanted the white to be on the background so that the white didn't get lost on the white square where the sentiment is. I am going to pop up the white one just a little bit. I'm trying to figure out where I want to place it. I wanted it down a little bit, but I was also conscious of the little bit of trapped space, to use Chamel's term for when she has space when she's doing scrapbook layouts. But you can see here when I start putting this back down, there's a little bit of space there that gets closed off. So I was trying to kind of get rid of that, but then I was going to have to cover the face on the pink ice cream, so I let it go. There's a little bit of a gap there, but I think it's okay. And most people would not even notice that. So I'm going to finish this off again, adding some glitter, and then I'm going to use the glossy accents for the little, I think these are strawberries actually, not cherries, but they're absolutely adorable. And like I said, I do think that this is my favorite card out of all of them. There's just something so adorable about those little ice cream cones. So on to the next card. I'm using this rainbow paper, and I'm going to be using the Paper Smooches Fun and Flirty stamp set. So I'm using the sentiment A Happy Hello, and I'm just showing you here that I want to use the stitched border around the papers that I'm going to be using to put on the card base. And so I cut those out with my Big Shot machine, so there is a stitched detailing around all four sides. And then I'm going to be using some glitter tape. And I've had this stuff in my stash forever, and I thought, why not use some glitter tape for these cards? I think they kind of go perfectly with the magical, whimsical theme. So busted that out, used a little bit of that up, which is good. I always love the feeling I get from using up stuff in my stash. Just going to trim this up a little bit, and then we're ready to start putting the card together. So I'm using my stamping tool here, and I'm going to stamp the sentiment right onto the piece of pink paper. And I'm going to stamp that a couple times. I wanted to make sure again that it was a nice, crisp, clean black image. And once I get this done, I'll just be trying to put the card together. So I would love to give away a card, one of these cards, to a viewer. All you have to do is just let me know in the comments which card is your favorite and that you would like to potentially receive a card from this series. And I will pick someone at random, and I will contact them by replying to the comment below. Once we've had a little bit of time, I'll probably have it open for about 2 weeks, roughly. And yeah, I'd be happy to send one of these to one of you, because I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your days to spend with me watching my videos. I really enjoy creating these 10 card series, and I hope that you're really liking them too. So I thought I could give back a little by sending out one of these cards. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here, pretty self-explanatory. So I'm using Scotch foam adhesive here, and I fill in the gaps off camera. Well, I just cut that piece out so you didn't have to watch it all. And then I'm going to put the little rainbow and clouds on the front of the card. And that will pretty much finish that one off. Once I add some glitter again to the clouds. So pretty cute. The clouds with the faces in them are so adorable. I've added some sequins here, and I've just gone ahead and prearranged them. I cut that bit out of the video. This is already a very long video, so I'm leaving adhering them onto the card base on the video so you can actually see where they are. And then we'll kind of move on here. So that's that card complete. And the last card is a birthday card. So I'm using the Lawn Fawn Happy 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 stamp set. And again, I just cut out a frame using the stitched rectangle dies and this adorable little balloon paper. And then the back is a little bit of a less kind of busy pattern paper. So I'm just going to stick that frame right on that pattern paper. Now I cut that one using my trimmer. It's just 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so a standard A2 size card panel here. And then I'm going to adhere that onto my card base. So I'm using the 3 large happy stamps that come in that set, and I'm going to stamp them right onto the pattern paper. That's why I wanted to choose one that wasn't kind of overpowering and with a lot of graphic on it so you could really see the sentiments. Now I do stamp these twice, and then I stamp that Scripty Happy 3 times just so that it matches the darkness of the 2 at the bottom. So I'm going to be using these little balloons that come in the die cut set, and I'm just trying to figure out how many I want to use, which ones I want to use where, what wouldn't overpower the card. The 4 was definitely too many and it was an even number, so I decided to go with the 3, and still playing around here with which ones I want to use, but then I think I've decided that I definitely want those 3. So I'm going to adhere these down straight to the card panel. Now you could pop these up and they would look absolutely adorable, but I decided just to have them all flat. Sometimes it's nice to just have some flat, easy to mail cards in your stash that you don't want to have to worry about extra postage or anything like that. So then I wanted to do the balloon strings, and I decided to do it with pencil first so that I could make sure that I was happy with the design. And I was with the first go. That like never happens. But then I'm just using a black marker here to trace along the pencil lines. And for this green one here, I am actually connecting it to the sentiment, which I think looks really cute. And then this last one just bringing down the side so it matches the one on the left. I'm going to make sure I get all of that pencil mark gone. And it was easier just to kind of put it over my garbage can. That's why I've removed it from the screen. So I'm using a white gel pen here just on the little shine marks of the balloons just to make them pop. And I do actually put some glossy accents over that as well. I'm using a black glaze pen on the eyes to make them pop as well. And then we're pretty much done, the 10 cards. So that's the outside of the card. For the inside, I just stamped birthday that came in the stamp set. So it says happy, happy, happy birthday. So I'm just going to show you a close-up of this, and then I will move on to showing you all of the 10 cards here in fast motion. So here's a quick look at them all. And I do have some still photos of each individual card here at the end of the video. So please let me know what card was your favorite. It is always so fun to see which one people like the most. And if you want a chance to have a card from me from this series sent to you, don't forget to let me know along with the card that you liked the most, and I will pick someone to pay it forward a little bit to thank you for watching my video. So I still have the Dragon Tales paper pad and die cut pack to use, so watch out for that video coming in the near future, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks again for joining me, and I will see you all really soon. Bye!